Okay, guys, we're gonna start, and then the rest of them has just watched the playback, I guess. Now, today we're going to be looking at quadratic equations. The first thing that I need to remind you guys on how quadratic equations works is the quadratic equation will always have a general formula of ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are their coefficients. Okay, it's called coefficient now, guys. So when I use this word, make sure you guys know what I'm talking about. A, B, C are coefficients. And then what you need to also know is that the formula for quadratic equation, the formula for negative b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a, right? This is to solve for x, okay? It's to solve for x, right? So this is the things that we will be learning how to do today. And for today's class, we will be actually focusing on completing the square. Completing the square, right? Okay. This method here is for you to find the minimum point. Minimum point. Okay, find the minimum point of a quadratic equation. Now, if you guys remember how a quadratic equation looks like, okay, I've actually plotted this on the decimals graph already. You can see that a quadratic equation will always have a smiley face like this, okay? It will always have a smiley face on like this, okay? Where you have the minimum point here. This is what we're going to use to completing the square method to find, okay? So for completing the square, the formula is like this, guys. First thing is you want to convert this into this formatting. I need you guys to understand that both of them actually represent the same thing. It's just a different way of showing the same equation, okay? They are the same. They are the same, okay? So now the first step is for completing the square, okay, is you want to isolate your already square, right, into a bracket like this. So there will always be a square, as you can see in the formatting here, okay? Now, what you put inside the square is, the first thing is you drag this back down here, and this will be x also, okay? Without the square, because the square is outside already by now. And you will also drag this, the b coefficient, okay? The coefficient of x, the b value, over here, and you will divide that by 2, okay? In other words, you're halving it, all right? So from 9, it will become 9 over 2, all right? Now, the next thing is, regardless of what you put inside here, this symbol here, wait, this symbol of minus is following this symbol up here, okay? But regardless of what you put in here, outside the square bracket will always be negative, minus, okay? You're going to minus off the same value that you had here. Minusing off the same value that you have here. And then it's square, so this one also needs a square. Okay? And then lastly, you just put this back at the far end. Then this is your completing the square method, okay? Now, for those of you who don't take that maths, for sure this is something very new. You guys haven't seen this before, okay? But the process has got to be the same no matter where you do it, okay? Let me just show you guys another example. Oh, wait, sorry. From here, let's finish simplifying this first, okay? Simplifying this here, x minus 9 over 2 squared, okay? And then this will be simplified negative 9 over 2 squared plus 12. Type that into your calculator. Make sure to bracket where needed. This will end up giving you 8 and 1 over 4. Minus 8 and 1 over 4. Like that. Anyone already confused at this part here?
Teacher, for the first part, how the first line, how did you get 9 over 2?
9 over 2 is from here, you see we half this, right? 9, we half it to become 9 over 2.
Then what about the second part?
The 9 over 2 here is a copy of whatever this is.
So
this is copied into here.
Then so what do we do about the x minus pq2, the first part?
This is basically the formatting that they're asking us to show him in now. Okay, you see here, this is what they ask us to show, right, for the quadratic equation. This is normal quadratic equation on the left. Okay,
Yes.
on the right is completing the square method, but they are actually the same equation, right? So what you have on the right, is they're telling you to format the quadratic into completing the square. So what I have here now is x minus p minus q. Again, x minus p minus q is the formatting already. So for this question, the p value is going to be 9 over 2, and the q value is going to be 8 and 1 over 4.
Then what about the negative? Does it matter?
Because there is a negative here, and then negative here, negative here, then negative here. So just ignore that already because they are equal already. Of course, I can change this into 4 and 1 over 2, or I can even represent it into 4.5 and 8.25 in both cases. In any case, you will all still be correct. But just make sure that if you are representing it in decimal, then both of them are in decimal. If you're representing it in fraction, then both of them are in fraction. Okay?
All right.
Okay. So anyone else, any questions for this part? Now, let me show you guys one more example, and then I'm going to jump further into this part of the questions. Okay. Oh wait, anybody still need to copy down this one? Who have a copy finish one? Okay. Okay. Now, show you guys one more example. The same concept as above. Okay. You see, they ask us to write the quadratic equation into the completing the square format. Okay. Now, first step is, again, you bracket and then you square. Correct. Then what we did after that was, this is in the second page, already, guys. This is in the second page. The next thing is that we will drag this down. This is x, then we put back x here. Right. Then next, we're going to drag this part here down. Since this is positive 10, unlike the last question, it was negative 9, right? If it's positive 10, then this symbol inside is plus 10 over 2, 10 over 2, right? Then remember I said after the square.
How do you know if it's 10 over 2? Is it just always 10 over some? Is it always just over 2?
Yeah, it's always half of whatever the b value is. Half of the b value.
Half of b value?
Yep.
Wait, what do you mean?
This is A is 1 ma, B is 10 ma, C is 14, right?
Yeah.
So inside this part here, it's always half of the b value.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, now I get it. All right.
Okay. But like I said, since no matter what it is, even if it's positive or negative in our first question example here, after the square bracket, it is always minus. Okay, it is always minus 10 over 2, then square like that. So make sure you bracket this part properly. Okay, then lastly, you drag this back here, plus 14.
So only the second part has to be a minus. The last part can just follows the one in front.
This first part follows the second part. Then
I mean the symbol, the minus and the plus.
Which one are you talking about?
Like you said that when you start to write the second one, it has to be minus, right? The second bracket, before the second bracket.
Yeah, before the second bracket is forever minus.
Then the value 14, it doesn't have, you can't change it to minus, right? You can leave it at positive.
This one follows, whatever is here follows.
Okay.
Up here just now it was plus 12, right? It will become plus 12.
Okay.
Okay. So then from here, we continue simplifying it. So actually we have x plus 5 square. Okay, and this is minus 25 plus 14. Type this into your calculator, you're going to get negative 11. Will you record down this and you can? Okay, you guys can see this now. After looking at the method, let me explain to you why we do what we do, and then why is it that we have to, how is it the same equation? So, okay, this part, anyone not done? Okay, look at this equation here, right? Let's look back at our first equation from just now, okay? This equation, okay, never mind, sorry, let's just look at this one first. Now, if I expand this equation here, okay, of x plus 5, then x plus 5 square, right, minus 11, you will notice that this one will become x squared plus 5x plus 5x, then plus 25 minus 11. Simplify this whole equation, you will have gotten x squared plus 10x plus 25 minus 11 plus 14, which is exactly what we started in the first equation. That's why I tell you that this is the quadratic format, this is the completing the square format, but they are equals to each other. Okay, they are equals to each other. Then why do we need to do it in the completing the square method? It's because we will use the values in there later. Okay, I'll show you how we're going to use the values in there. But this is the first part lah. You need to understand that they are exactly the same thing. Okay, after you expand it. Now, as to why this part here is minus, okay, this part here will always be minus because, right, inside here, if this is x plus 5, you have plus 25 in here already, isn't it? That's why outside the bracket, you always have a minus 25 here. You see, because of this plus 25, that's why you always minus whatever that is there also. It's going to be the same for the value on top. If you see here, when we expand this bracket, x minus 9 over 2, x minus 9 over 2, right? Okay. When we expand, it's going to be x squared, then minus 9 over 2, minus 9 over 2, minus 9x, okay? Then in the inside, you have plus 81 over 4. That's why on the outside, we also have to minus 81 over 4. You see, to make the equation back into the same thing. You guys see this part here? Can understand, huh? Okay, that's why the logic is this one will follow, this one will follow, but this part here will always be minus because it doesn't matter, if it is minus or if it's plus in the end, the third value here will always be plus 81 over 4. Okay? Anyone didn't get this part? You for sure. Okay, but even if you didn't get this part, don't worry too much about it because it's just an explanation. If you follow the formula, you will still be able to do the question. Okay, the blue part is the explanation and you don't need to copy it down. Okay, it's just the explanation only. Now, let's do one more example together and then we'll look into the next part of the question. Question 3 on completing the square. Again, if you look at this formatting here, sometimes, sometimes when they ask you to do completing the square, they can say something like negative q plus x plus e square. I need you guys to still be able to recognize that this is still completing the square format. Okay, so again, one more time, doing this together. First, you put a bracket, then the bracket is for sure squared. This value here is dragged down x, then this value here is dragged down but half. Okay, dragged down but half, so it's become minus 12 over 2, plus 12 over 2. Okay, outside the bracket is always minus, then 12 over 2 square. Okay, because like I showed you just now, the expansion, you have to minus back off the square, right? Then lastly, this one gets dragged back out also. minus 7. Simplify this equation here. You would end up with and therefore in this case P will equal to 6 and Q will equal to 43.
How does it become 12 over 3?
Because it's when you drag this part here down, it is always half of the value. So from 12, right, becomes 12 over 2. Okay, it is always half of the value in B. Anybody cannot follow this part? Because we're going to move on from here and how to use the completing the square method. Sao thế? Sao thế? Sao?
我考错了地方。
凭你的腿呀！为什么迟到？以后谁能搬到我这里？
我们一路都在塞车，好吗？从我家出来到雪山，哦，塞到1%都在塞。
很多我来也是很多 X， 一直有 X。
好几条都塞车。So we only do half the value.
Half the B value. Okay. Okay, now let's look at the application of the completing the square. So guys, back to your first page here. Okay. Now you see in the follow-up question to it, right? After you have done your completing the square, they will ask you to find the minimum value of your quadratic equation here that we just did in completing the square method. You would notice that it is only a 1-mark question. It's because all we have to do is to extract the answer from our previous answer here. Okay? The minimum point, which is supposed to be in coordinates, the minimum point is supposed to be in coordinates x and y, okay? It actually can be extracted from here. This will be your x value, and this will be your y value here. The only trick is the x value, because it's in a bracket, okay, you have to invert it. Negative 9 over 2 will become positive 9 over 2. This y value is not in a bracket, isn't it? Okay, you guys can see wait. This is in a bracket, this is supposed to be your x, this is not in the bracket, this is supposed to be your y, okay? So the x value is going to become positive 9 over 2. Whereas the y value is just going to be whatever that is, negative 8 and 1 over 4. And this will be the minimum point of your...
Teacher, is that always like the one in the bracket is x, the one without the bracket is y?
Yes, always.
Okay.
So your minimum point for your quadratic equation will be this here. And then I can even show it to you when the plotted graph, you guys see, is exactly like what we found. This is the minimum point of your quadratic equation. Okay? So the next part in question 1, they're asking you to write down the equation of line of symmetry of the graph for y equals to x squared, blah, 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 the whole question is now. The line of symmetry, away, guys, if you look at what the graph is, the line of symmetry is just basically the straight line down that cuts the graph in half. Okay, so you need to know how to label this line here. This line is what, x or y? What line is this called? Yeah, obviously. But how do you label it?
X.
X equals to the line is 4.5 already because this is the line of symmetry for 4.5. You know, the minimum point away, guys, is where you cut the graph into exactly half one. You cut it into exactly half, okay? So the line of symmetry, that means if you fold the line together, fold the graph together, it will become, you know, overlapping on each other. So the minimum point, the line of symmetry, is going to be x.
Wait, teacher, can you explain the what again? Can you explain the second question? Write down the minimum value of this. So do you not just put in the x and y value and then solve it like an algebraic question?
Why? You're not solving also? You're looking for the minimum point. The minimum point of a quadratic equation, you can see is here. Okay, here. This is the quadratic equation. Then this is the minimum point. The minimum point, like I said, can be extracted from the completing the square method.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. How do you get 4/1/2 though? Is it from the 9?
9/2
Okay.
simplify to that Wait.
Okay. I think so. You just write down the value again now.
Yeah.
All right, got it.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else? Not sure? Now, the next question, we're going to be doing the sketch for the graph right here. We need to learn how to sketch the graph. Okay? Okay? Okay. So, you see again, from the second question that we've already done, we have our this thing already. We need to sketch the graph and indicating the lines of the turning point and also the y-axis intercept and the x-axis intercept. Okay, what do I mean? If you look at the graph that I sketched here, you see you have two values that intercept the x-axis, and then you have one value that intercepts the y-axis. We need to be able to determine where these points are. And everything that we need to know has actually been what we learned in the last previous chapters already. Okay, so the first thing is we know that the minimum point, so the minimum point here in this case, what's the value? What's the minimum point for this quadratic graph in the second question? It's from here already, huh? X is how much? X is the inverse of this because it's inside the bracket. Okay, so in here is if it's 5, then the minimum point is going to be -5. Then the y is -11 because we can see from the completing the square. The completing the square method, again, I remind you guys, is just for you to get the minimum point. Okay? Because it's in the bracket. Now, in the bracket here, x plus 5 is actually equals to 0. Okay, so x would equals to, bring the 5 over, -5. Of course, if you want to be even more technical, it is square. Okay, so square root of 0 is still 0, right? then only have x plus 5, and then bring over becomes -5, like that. Okay? So now, since we know the minimum point already, we sketch the point where it is first. It's going to be it's going to be -5 and -11. Let's just say it's somewhere here, -5 and 11 here. This has got to be the minimum point. So if we draw the graph, right, it's going to look maybe like this, or even maybe like this. Okay. How do we know which one is which? Next thing we need to know is the x-intercepts, the 2 points where they intercept the graph, like here and here. Wait. Okay. How do we do that? Anyone still remember? No. Okay. To find that, it's basically by solving your x value, which you can do in your calculator, which we did not bring. When are you bringing a calculator, Eileen? Next week. Okay, calculator can do it, or you can use the quadratic formula. You can either use the calculator or you can use the quadratic formula, but obviously the calculator is much faster.
Wait, so why is 5 negative?
Because it's in the bracket.
Ah, okay.
Similar, like up here, negative here becomes positive. Okay.
So if it's in the bracket, it becomes negative.
Yeah, the invert of it. Okay.
Ah.
Yes, that one. Yes. Okay. So in your calculator, guys, if you guys don't remember, it's basically mode. Okay. Then you go into EQN, and then you go into the right-hand side and you press degrees. Then you would get ABC. All you have to do is type in the ABC here. A is 1, B is 10, C is 14. You would therefore get two values of x. 2. Okay. You would therefore get x value of -1.68, and x also equals to -8.32. Okay. These two will basically be your x-intercept. Oh, you type in the calculator, can find out, can see on this one. If you don't know how to type in the calculator,
C is 14, right?
C is 14, yeah.
Okay.
Like this. Mode, equal 1. Okay. Unknowns, no. This is for simultaneous. That's to the right-hand side. The right-hand side, degrees 2 and 3 because it's x squared, so it's degrees 2. Okay, degrees 2. Then the ABC value, what's the A? That's the coefficients of the quadratic equation. A is 1, B is 10, C is 14. Okay, or you can use the quadratic formula, which, if you write down the quadratic formula for you, it's going to be -10. There's a minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. In this case, when you plus the square root, you will get one answer here, and you minus the square root, you get another answer here.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, so now that you know, guys, that you have two, basically from here also you get two answers of x, the plus and the minus, that's how you get two answers. Okay, then you would have gotten -1.68 here, and then -8.32 here. So last point that you need is the y-intercept. The y-intercept, which is the part here, guys, here, okay, then it's basically 14 according to your quadratic equation. 14. Now that you have everything, you can finally sketch the graph. It will look like this. Well, of course, you guys need to draw it very nicely lah. Actually, the trick is, right, guys, the trick is that you draw it like that first. Okay, you draw it like that first, And then only you label the points, since it's easier to label like that. But if you do it like me, stupid way, then you make sure you cross every point properly and make sure your curve is nice. But ideally, I would have started the graph like this one. I would straight away, because I know the points already, I would go like that. Okay, and then from here only I label them. This is 14, this is -168, and this point here is -5, -11, and this point here is -8.32, all of which we calculated from the equation itself.
Teacher, if they don't give you a of the quadratic formula, you just assume it's 1, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay.
It's always 1. It's 1x squared, man. Okay. Question time. Did anyone not get any of these parts here? Which part? That's because you're late. I'll show you one full question, okay? Okay, because Haley was late. Let's do question 4 together, okay? We skip question 3 first, okay? We'll do the whole thing together, okay? So in this kind of question, instead of asking you to sketch the graph and then blah, 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 they very specifically want you to find A, B, C, and then D, okay? Of which AB is the values of X after you solve it. C is the y-intercept, which is the easiest to find, because it's just straight away -4, right? And D will be the minimum point. How do we get the minimum point? From completing the square, okay? So let's do completing the square for this equation together. Question 4, guys. Completing the square, again, first thing is we know that for sure got bracket law, got bracket and square, okay? Then what we do is we just drag this down. This is X here, right? The next thing that we drag down is this, but we half it. We half this value here. It becomes +3/2. Then outside the completing the square, for sure is -3/2 squared, because whatever is inside here, we copy back down in here. Okay? Then, because when we expand this, okay, when we expand this, the last part of the A, B, and then the C part will always be 9/4 positive. Okay, so since there's an extra plus 9/4 here, then we minus 9/4 here. Okay. Okay, then lastly, drag this back out, you have -4. Okay, so from here, simplify the equation, you have x plus 3/2 minus 9/4. Hey guys, don't just watch me type it out. You guys better type it yourself also. Make sure that you can see your answer also. This is basically -6 and 1/4 according to the calculator. Then I successfully converted the quadratic equation to completing the square. Now, from here, we know that our minimum point can be extracted from here. The minimum point is how much? Okay, because we extracted it from our equation here. Okay, sorry. -6 and 1/4. Oh, where is the square? Good question. I missed it.
So we need to change outside.
Yes, inside the bracket only. Outside the bracket, no need. You see, this one should come back here. This one changed to negative. Okay, Okay, so now that we have the minimum point, that's the coordinates for D already, isn't it? That's the coordinates for D, -3/2 and -6 and 1/4. Like, now the next thing is C. C, like I said, is the easiest to find already, ma. It's just whatever the value here at the back is. Then we know that the coordinate will therefore be, the coordinates for C is therefore 看得出了，真的不用
Object.
对啦 so it's the coordinate is coordinate x y 0 and -4 coordinate 对吗 okay and then lastly we need to find A and B. A and B is the values of x, right? You can either type it into the calculator or you can use the quadratic formula. Of course, typing it into the calculator, yes lah. -4, you would have gotten from here x equals to 1 or x equals to -4. Hey, don't just look at me type, don't just look at my answer, try it yourself, everyone. So after you've gotten this already, then you cannot just anyhow hentam and say that this is 1, 0, this is -4, 0. Like that, you will be wrong. Because obviously the position of A is at the negative point, isn't it? Okay, so you need to identify where your points are first. A is -4, 0, and B is 1, 0. So again, if we did not use the calculator method, we could have used the quadratic formula to solve for x and y. X would equal to -b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Type 2, 1. Okay, type this whole thing in the calculator, you would have gotten x also equals to 1 or x equals to some questions they will ask you guys to use the quadratic formula, so you need to know what is this value now. The longest lesson in maths ever. 40 minutes already.
Wait, teacher, how do you know when you need to use a quadratic formula?
They will ask you to. If they ask you to, you must use it. As in, like, write down the working line. Obviously, you can still just show this working and then say x equals to. You don't need to.
Wait, so they will tell you to use quadratic equation to solve the working?
Yeah, or if the question is like asking you to solve for x and then it's like a 4-mark question or something like that.
Okay.
Okay. Now, anybody still got any parts they don't understand?
Get -2, 6, and 1.
Okay. That's why I say this is -6.1/4. If you guys are okay with the question already, please attempt the rest of it on your own and then find out if there's anything that you guys do not understand. And I'm going to take a call right now.
我还是我这要吃掉。还是这个这里超长度是减三。
因为无所要减的这个，减的这个超过3个车身，这个接受。所以这个它减的这个这个in order for this system equals to this。
那也是很简，它原来
我就像这个字节的话，这个简简，但是这个是这样，就是简简这样。
是这里，
Oh, question 5, don't need to do completing the square. You just need to know how to sketch. I mean, if you don't know how to sketch, you can completing the square. Done. Goodbye.
我大概看来什么？我拿纸来写，我大概看。哦，我这没有，我拿跟听力机上拿出来看。
Guys, if you don't know how to do question 5, do question 3 and question 6 first, okay? Question 5 can have an alternative method.
Does anyone know how to send a waste location?
I don't know. Why? Sure, that's fine. Excellent.
还有一个，
很好。
还有一个，两个吗？
我们把两个东西填。
你会找两个吗？你就只是写答案哦。
在这了。Now round it off to one less.
3 significant figures. Ah. Oh, because you don't have calculator. You can use method. Negative b, so here negative b plus minus square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a.
You can ask.
Is that minimum as you change this? Result.
Can I just? Yeah. B. Line of symmetry is just the x line value.
-3 plus minus the square root of 9 plus 16. 9 -4 -4 9 plus 16 and 4. Yang kedua di belakang dan -3 minus square root. This one will give you x equals to 1. This will give you x equals to 4. Okay. 减3减5减3减5除2嘛？对，减8
哦，没有。
Okay, guys, I'll send you guys the answer sheet here for you guys to check your answers. So you guys can, for those of you who attempted it already, you guys can check and see if you did it correctly or not. Okay. Okay, then if nobody has any questions, that will be it for you guys, and I will be going for my next class. Okay.